Welcome into Hockey Sense, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Today is the day of the first round of the NHL draft. Looking forward to that tonight. I'll be doing a lot of work with the Blues. Hopefully, we'll have some news to pass along. Certainly a potential first-round pick as the Blues sit at the 19th spot coming up in the first round tonight. They've got a couple of picks tomorrow on Saturday. Pretty quiet season, quiet year in terms of the draft for the Blues. All NHL teams, by the way, are in their home cities, and I would imagine this is the last year we do that. I don't think people in the industry, at least those who I've talked to, are not very excited about the setup for this season. It's kind of nice having everybody in one spot. You can get a lot of business done that way. Certainly easier to communicate. Agents, general managers, different GMs speaking to other GMs, all of that. We've got a packed show for you today on this edition of Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. We love our friends over there at First Community. They got so much to offer, including that Little Blues program. Sign your son or daughter up today for Little Blues and get them introduced to the game of ice hockey. It's how I got my son started. And I would imagine so many people listening right now or who have sons and daughters who are playing the game, teenagers, those who are now in their 20s, got their start with Little Blues, and it's an incredible program. You get all your equipment, including skates, stick, helmets. So if you're one of those parents and you're going to the hockey shop, you don't know what to get. It's way too overwhelming. I mean, do I get this? Do I get that? There's so much equipment. Well, guess what? You sign up for Little Blues, give them the sizes, and everything comes in the mail right to you. Great setup, great situation, great coaching, great instruction, and it's the best way to just decide if your son or daughter wants to continue to play before you invest just a lot of money into the game of hockey. So we love having our friends from First Community with us here on Hockey Sense on a busy day. Darren Dreger is going to join us. We'll talk all about free agency coming up in just a couple of minutes. Tim Taylor is going to join us from the St. Louis Blues. He is obviously heavily involved on the amateur side for the Blues, pro side as well, but certainly with the amateur side. And we've got prospect camp, development camp, whatever you want to call it, starting up on Monday, the 30th. This is right after the draft, so I would imagine whoever the Blues draft this weekend, assuming they can get here, they will be in attendance for the upcoming development camp. I always love development camp. This is going to be a little bit of a different setup. No evening scrimmages. You're not going to have a couple of teams split up where they scrimmage every single day. They may scrimmage, but it's going to be part of the practice plan, and maybe they'll finish the practice 15, 20 minutes of scrimmage at the end of a practice, but no nighttime scrimmages, nothing like that. So a little bit different, but still an opportunity to see the future of the St. Louis Blues in attendance for the upcoming prospect camp. Looking forward to that. We'll talk to Tim Taylor about that. The Blues have changed their uniforms for the coming season. They've got a new logo. They've got a new color scheme, all of that. Blues president and CEO Chris Zimmerman with us in studio to break down the new jerseys and kind of discuss the inspiration behind changing things. It's a new look for the Blues, including this logo. I don't normally wear team-branded stuff, but I'll wear this. This is like a nice little St. Louis logo. It's unique. It's different. Exclusive to the Blues. But they sent me this nice shirt. My son got a nice hat. I mean, they got some great new stuff, new apparel. Check it out. You can get one of these T-shirts. Chris Zimmerman will tell us where we can get them. I would imagine at the team store. But my son, wearing this light blue and gold hat the other day. We had more people stop us. Where'd you get that hat? Where can I find it? Where can I get it? I put it up on Instagram. So many messages coming in. We'll find out when they're available. I would imagine they're going to be available very soon. Maybe not until September. I know they told us when we met with Steve Chapman, head of marketing, vice president of marketing for the Blues, and also Chris Zimmerman. They gave us all the dates, but we'll let Z fill us in. So a packed show. Tim Taylor, Darren Dreger, and Chris Zimmerman all joining us on this edition of Hockey Sense. The Blues are looking for a center. They're also looking for a right shot D. I've said that now for several weeks now here on Hockey Sense, telling you about the Blues' preferences, what they want to accomplish. Now, Bowen Byram is a guy who's out there, a young defenseman who obviously was drafted very high a few years back, been playing in Buffalo, drafted by Colorado, 4th overall, I believe, just a couple of years ago. Big-time prospect coming out of junior hockey. That's why he went 4th overall, and I think there's some interest there from the Blues as well. Listen, Byram had no interest in signing long-term with Buffalo. That's why Buffalo is looking to move on from him. He was trying to get a 1 or 2 year deal to stay in Buffalo on a very short-term contract. But in reality, the best prospect management for the Buffalo Sabres would probably be to move him now. I think this is the best opportunity to get your most value this offseason, maybe compared to next offseason. So we'll get an idea of what that looks like coming up. They had a lot of interest in Noah Dobson from the Islanders. I just talked to his camp within the last 15, 20 minutes. And so it has been confirmed that Dobson is looking to stay in the Eastern Conference if he's going to sign an extension with the team, which he most likely will have to if the Islanders are going to recoup the return that they want if they move him for the big right shot defenseman who's 25 years of age. You know they're going to get a boatload for him. He wants $10 million plus. In fact, I understand from what I'm being told is that he's looking for $11 million a year. Noah Dobson, $11 million, man. These guys are getting paid some big-time money, assuming he can get it. Now, I don't know who's going to pay him $11 million, but maybe somebody will. So that's where we're at with Noah Dobson, but the Blues are no longer in the running for him. I know some people were talking about maybe Kyrou being involved in a package, and maybe Kyrou being involved in a package for J.J. Peterka, who got moved from Buffalo to Utah, and some people are underwhelmed by the deal. Listen, it is what it is. You got to get the best deal you can get. You got to identify players that you want. They got a big defenseman, obviously, that they compare with their other defensemen they have under contract, who's young, kind of fits into the time range. Listen, I never understand what Buffalo is doing, to be honest with you, and why they can't keep some of these younger players. Other players they have been able to keep. You know, I mean, Dahlin signed an extension, Tage Thompson signed an extension, Owen Power signed an extension. So they've had a number of players who have shown the willingness to stay in Buffalo. But for whatever reason, they can't do that across the board and keep everyone to stay. But anyway, Dobson's staying in the Eastern Conference, so he's no longer an option here in St. Louis. Maybe I would think the Blues would have some interest in Byram, but again, he's a left shot. They have a lot of left shot defensemen. They're going to have to move on from somebody if they add a D. You know, you just wonder if Justin Falk, if he's a guy that they would move on from. Who knows? Nick Leddy is a guy who, has got 1 year left on his deal. I will say this, last season, not this past season, but the season before, Leddy played unbelievable hockey playing with Colton Parayko, and the organization was really happy with him. Last year, it's kind of tough to evaluate Leddy because he dealt with so many, or a kind of a crazy, weird injury. He had a nerve issue in his neck that just wouldn't go away, wouldn't get any better. He was off the ice for a long time. And when he got back, some of those muscles that, weakened or were affected by the injury, they never got back to full strength. So he never really was able to truly recover. So we'll see where that goes. I think he would waive his no trade. That kicks in on July 1st, by the way. I think his no trade goes away on July 1st. It's the opposite of Kyrou. Kyrou's no trade kicks in on July 1st. Leddy, I think his no trade goes away on July 1st. So they can move him anywhere they want. Although I don't think Leddy would really block a potential move. I guess depending where. But I think he'd go to a team that he could have a role and be a 5 or a 6 on a team that has a chance to make the playoffs, maybe a contending team. He's got a lot of experience. And he can still skate. But I haven't checked in with him in a while to see how he's feeling after dealing with what he went through during the offseason. I've said a couple times that the Blues' number one person of interest is Mikael Granlund, who finished the season in Dallas. And let me just say this about Granlund. Listen, number one person of interest, maybe that is a little bit of a stretch. I just know there is serious interest on the Blues' part. And I think this comes down to whether or not Granlund wants to sign in St. Louis. I think that is what it'll come down to. I think he's got some personal issues that are important to him that will factor into his decision in terms of what he does in free agency and who he signs with, assuming he can't go back to Dallas. I mean, you never want to shut the door there. Whenever a team wants to keep you, you never shut the door. But he played wing in Dallas because they were loaded up the middle. There was really no spot for him to play center. He thrived playing on the wing. Obviously, he had a hat trick in a game in the Stanley Cup playoffs really just popped, man. He flashed. When you watch the Dallas Stars play, he was one of those players that stood out. And I think it's because of his work ethic. This guy works his balls off, man. I mean, he works so hard. And he's been that guy his entire career. I mean, you talk to scouts around the league, they rave about Mikael Granlund. Now, he's 33 now, not getting any younger. I would imagine he's going to want some term attached to a deal. I mean, can you get him on a 3-year deal? Is he going to force a team to give him that 4th year? That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I know the Blues have had interest in him in the past, and maybe there's been some interest from on his side to maybe come to St. Louis. But that's where we sit right now with Granlund. The Blues have interest. I think they'll be able to really get into serious conversations, obviously, once we get to July 1. Let's start really recruiting him to St. Louis. But that'll be a target of theirs for sure. But again, it comes down to the player. The player has to want to come to St. Louis, and I think there are some legitimate concerns that he's trying to work through on his end to make St. Louis a potential destination. You know, other teams are certainly going to be involved and have a lot of interest in the veteran center. He played center in San Jose. This guy would be signed as a center here in St. Louis. I think if you look at the Blues, they would love to add some creativity, some real dynamic offensive skill to their second line center position. Bump down Braden Shen to the third line center. And, now you have some legitimate depth. I mean, you always have the luxury with Shen to slide him over to the wing if you want to. But if you look at the Blues' top 4 wingers right now, with Kyrou and Buchnevich and Snuggerud and Holloway, those are your top 4 wingers. And then you don't even get to Bolduc yet, who obviously showed that this guy can score goals in the National Hockey League and didn't have the best playoff. But I think you got to go by his growth that he showed after Jim Montgomery took over. So, he's a guy that eventually is going to factor into your top 6, and he'll probably do so as soon as next year. I mean, I look at a guy like Buchnevich. I think Buchnevich, the older he gets, I think the more flexibility you're going to have among your top 9 to kind of slide him up and down the wing position. Shouldn't play center. I didn't like that last year. I think that kind of threw his season off. Took him a while to really get back to where he needed to be. He was dealing with an injury for much of the season as well that didn't get talked about a whole lot. And they really couldn't pinpoint exactly what the injury was that was really bothering him. I mean, they knew the area of the body that was affecting him, but just in terms of pinpointing how to treat it, I think it took some time. And they were able to do that. But I think Buchnevich is the guy that if you wanted to play him on your third line as we move forward into next season and certainly beyond, then that's a move you can make. So it's interesting. Kyrou's name's been out there. I don't think Doug Armstrong would necessarily have to move on from a Jordan Kyrou to get a Noah Dobson, who the Islanders basically have to move. I mean, he's got 1 year left on his deal. He's not going to sign. So the team trading for him obviously has a little bit of leverage, and not to mention that it's much like the Matthew Tkachuk situation when he left Calgary. I mean, Dobson isn't going to go anywhere without a contract extension. So you're almost limited when you're the Islanders in terms of what your return can be, because you can't just trade him to any team. You're going to want to make sure that you're getting the most return possible. And the way you do that is to make sure that team knows he's going to be there long term and they have a contract extension in place. Well, he's not going to sign a contract extension with a team that he doesn't want to play for long term, right? And therefore, you're not going to get the return that you want if he doesn't have a contract extension. So, I don't think the Blues are like, oh, we got to give you Jordan Kyrou. If he wanted to come to St. Louis, they would find a way to make it work, and the Blues would find a way to make that deal done without giving up their leading goal scorer. Talking to Kyrou's camp, and take this for what it is. I'm just giving you my own information here from my own reporting. They don't believe in any of this talk about him potentially getting moved. Kyrou's agent and Doug Armstrong have been very close friends for over 30 years. he's not putting any stock into this whatsoever, talking about Kairu's camp, about his name being out there in trade rumors. I'm sure it has been thrown out there, and people are connecting the dots because of his no trade kicking in on July 1st. If you're ever going to move him without him having a say or being able to, kind of drive the bus or steer the bus in terms of where things go, this would be the time to do so. But I just don't get the sense that Kairu maybe is as available as people are making it out to be, assuming you believe his camp. But he'd have no reason to lie to me and tell me otherwise. So they flat out don't believe the noise, and I guess we'll find out in due time if Kairu ends up getting moved. A couple things. Hall of Fame. Congrats to all the guys getting into the Hall of Fame. Next year will be Keith Tkachuk's year. I firmly believe that. Patrice Bergeron will be a lock, and then you'll have Carey Price, who could be a lock next year. A lot of people were surprised that he didn't get in this year. So that leaves a couple of open spots. And I think next year is looking very positive for Keith Tkachuk. So we'll talk about that as we move along, obviously, certainly as we get through and closer to next year's announcement. But I think look for Keith Tkachuk to get in to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Finally, where he belongs, next year I think is his best opportunity to get in. For Keith Tkachuk. So much to get into. We'll talk Tavares, we'll talk Marner, we're going to talk Matthew Nyes, we'll talk Jordan Kyrou, we'll talk Bowen Byram. Again, Byram was only interested in signing a 1 or 2 year contract extension with Buffalo, and Buffalo obviously not happy about that. They said, hey, we're just going to move on and try to recoup the most we can get for him. But he obviously didn't want to stay long-term in Buffalo. I want to tell you about Frontenac car detailing. Jim Winkleman's my guy. Listen, I took my car in there the other day. I had some scratches. My kid actually took an ice scraper during the winter to my car. And it got all scratched up. My car did, because he took an ice scraper to my car. I take it to Jim Winkleman. This guy, he's like magic. I mean, absolutely magic. I had some little scrapes here and there. Somebody hit my car in a parking lot at one point. There was a little bit of paint on there. Got rid of that. I mean, this guy is a miracle worker. Jim Winkleman, Frontenac Detailing. Give him a call. I'm going to send my car in there in a couple of weeks for this ceramic wax coating that they put on. It's like a ceramic coating that they put on your car where your car looks even nicer than it did when you drove it off the lot when you first bought it. So if you have a wife like mine who's got kids in the car all the time and they're eating in the car and there's snacks everywhere and there's chips and the seat cushions are gross and you touch things and it's sticky, everyone has, you know what I'm talking about. You either know somebody or your wife is like that, or you're driving the car and your car is like that because your kids just kind of trash it. Listen, take it to Frontenac Detailing and let them clean your car up and make it look like new. They're unbelievable. So call Jim Winkleman today with Frontenac Detailing. If I can find that phone number, I'll get it to you later on in the show. But just look it up, Frontenac Detailing. They're right inside the Frontenac Honda dealership. They're not necessarily affiliated to the Honda dealership, but they are, that's where they're located, right there in the Frontenac Honda dealership. So if you want to make an appointment, you actually go through Honda to make the appointment. But anyway, Frontenac Detailing, Jim Winkleman, look them up. Check it out right there in Frontenac, right there at Conway and Lindbergh. Can't miss it. There's a lot of construction around there right now, but you can get in there. So check that out. Dirt Cheap Fun, your one-stop party shop. Download the app today. They're the absolute best at everything. Don't sleep on their party supplies, too. Everyone talks about the beer, wine, and booze, which they excel at. They have incredible options when it comes to the beer, wine, and booze, including that incredible walk-in beer cooler. But do not sleep on the party supplies. So if you have 4th of July parties coming up, summer barbecues, back-to-school parties, all of that type of stuff, listen, get all your decorations and all your paper supplies at a Dirt Cheap location nearest you. Some of the locations have drive-thrus. Many of them have curbside pickup. You don't have to get out of your car. You can do your shopping from the app. It really is unbelievable. Dirt Cheap, the Wallace family is just taking Dirt Cheap to the next level. We love it, and everything they do for us here on Hockey Sense. Gail Alshey with Travel House. You're looking to book a vacation. Still have time to do so this summer. All-inclusive vacations. You want to look at spring breaks for next year or winter's ski vacations, whatever it is, cruises, European travel. Travelhouse.com, Haus, Travel House. Ask for Gail. She'll take unbelievable care of you. Travel House, Haus. Blue Note Roofing. We had David Novak in studio last week. You know he'll be locked to the television tonight watching the draft. David Novak, 314-920-5713. Have you been affected by the storm? Do you have storm damage? Give him a call, 314-920-5713. Gutters, soffit, fascia, roofing, siding, whatever it is. If you suffered any damage, let them come out and give you that free estimate. He'll talk pucks with you too. Look for that big yellow truck with the Blue Note on the side of it. Can't miss it. Blue Note Roofing. And of course, Lordo's Diamonds. Get that special someone, something special in your life from Lordo's Diamonds. LordosDiamonds.com. Mike and Jimmy, no one does it better. You look at the pop, the question, now's a great time. Best selection of engagement rings anywhere. You'll find it. Lordo's Diamonds. Again, LordosDiamonds.com. Say hi to Mike and Jimmy when you get in there. Say hi to Pat, Cindy, everybody over there at Lordo's Diamonds. They're the absolute best. If you walk in there with a $100,000 budget or a $500 budget, you're going to get treated exactly the same, no different. People have been going to Lordo's Diamonds for years, right in the heart of Ladue, right next to Truffles. Can't miss it. 314-432-8008. Lordo's Diamonds. Tell them Andy Strickland sent you. All right, let's step aside. When we come back, Darren Dreger, TSN. We talk hardcore free agency. That's next. Don't go anywhere. All right, always great to have Darren Dreger with us here on Hockey Sense. And so much going on tonight. Obviously, the first round of the NHL draft. You got free agency beginning early next week. So lots happening. And Darren, I do want to ask you this real quick because you're not in LA. I'm not in LA. When's the last time you were not at a draft?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? It might drift all the way back to me first joining the network, and that was Sportsnet back in 1998, Andy, to be honest. Maybe missed one or two early back then, but no, historically, I'm in attendance like you are at a lot of these drafts, if not the majority of them. And the feedback from this one is interesting. You know, hey, look, it was initially motivated by general managers because of how condensed this time of year is. You know, and it's expensive for all clubs. You know, you move out your entire hockey operations department, scouting staffs, all of that, have them on the road, get them there, put them in hotels and whatnot. And then everybody has to hustle back and get ready for July 1st. So that's why the idea of the decentralized draft, got some motivation behind it, with all general managers really, for the most part, as far as I know, are all in their own respective club cities now. But the challenge that I'm getting as of today on Friday is that just battling with the time zones. Yeah. You know, you got a 3-hour difference between the Eastern time zone and obviously the Pacific time zone. And that was a challenge Thursday night, and it's a challenge today. So I doubt very much that we'll see a decentralized draft moving forward.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And again, the agents kind of have to be out there, especially if they have players who are being drafted in the first round. So I mean, the guys who live out in the East, they got to be all the way out there. And business typically gets done a little bit easier, I think, when you're face-to-face as well. And I will say this, agents don't love the setup either, from what I understand, and some executives who may be out there. I think each team is sent a representative, but with the travel being all the way out west, free agency starting Tuesday, I mean, that's a short turnaround from the draft to free agency. Some people don't, they wish there was a bigger gap between free agency and the draft. Is that really an issue or no?
It always is an issue. Yes. In the moment, it's an issue. And we talk about it, you know, like days like today, the managers will talk about it until you get past July 1st. Yeah. And, you know, you sign your guys and then you start talking about, okay, what does the rest of the offseason look like? And we forget about it. Yeah. And every year this time of year, it comes up, okay, well, is there any way you could push it off of July 1st? Maybe it could be a little bit later. And it never seems to happen. And if it's not part of the new collective bargaining agreement, which will also be unveiled later today in California, then I think it's just something that everybody's going to have to live with for the foreseeable future. I mean, it is problematic. It is. But when you look at the bigger picture of the NHL calendar, pushing everything back doesn't necessarily make it better.
And real quick, because I know time is short, but the CBA, anything you want to touch on there? What's the biggest concession maybe the players gave up? And is there something that really there's an 84 game schedule, and you look at contract maybe length being reduced a little bit. What stands out the most to you?
You know what stands out for me is how they're going to manage LTIR and how that's applied in the playoffs. I mean, historically, as we know, there have been teams that have used it to their advantage. And for those who don't understand what that means, all right, you get cap relief if you have a player who's on long-term injury during the regular season. And if it works out where that player isn't available to the club until game one of the Stanley Cup playoffs, well, that club can utilize the cap relief at the trade deadline to acquire other pieces. There, to this point, hasn't been a salary cap in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
That's going to change in this new CBA. I'm not entirely sure what the language reads, but I am told that every regular season game and postseason game is going to require cap compliance.
Yeah.
All right. So what does that mean in terms of, is the cap elevated in the playoffs? Don't know. I'm looking real forward to reading what that's all about. So that, in a nutshell, is the biggest thing for me. And this might apply to St. Louis. Certainly does to some of the smaller market Canadian teams. The revenue sharing plan is going to be different, and it is going to be more beneficial to the smaller market clubs around the National Hockey League. And what is interesting about this is that's not a concession that the players had to dive into. This is strictly from the owners' perspective, but there will be an enhanced revenue sharing program that will help smaller market clubs as well.
Well, those owners are going to like that for sure. All right, Vegas and Mitch Marner. It seems like the most Vegas thing to do. And I got to be honest with you, Dregs, you look at Vegas for the first couple years they were in the league. It was a little annoying. They were after everybody. They kept bringing on one star after the next. Didn't show a whole lot of loyalty to some guys. But I got to tell you, the more that they're in the league and the longer they're in the league, I appreciate what they do because they always try to win and they're always in the mix.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I understand the frustration because there's a boldness and an aggressiveness around the Vegas Golden Knights. And it feels like it's been like that since they were introduced into the National Hockey League, obviously as an expansion team. But, it starts at the top. And you can say that about every pro sports organization. But, in this case, Bill Foley, the owner of the Vegas Golden Knights, his mandate is to win a Stanley Cup, not to be a good team, not to just make the playoffs. It's to win the Stanley Cup every single year and be as aggressive as you need to as a management group to make sure that the right pieces are in the lineup to help that. And that's why, there have been some real tough decisions that Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee have had to make over the years. From, hiring coaches, firing good coaches, making changes like that, the tough decisions that they made to very popular players like Marc-Andre Fleury, things like that. But it's always in the spirit of winning. And so when I look at what Vegas might pull off and accomplish in this offseason, the days ahead, I think there's a real chance that the Golden Knights again are going to win the offseason. And maybe it starts and ends with signing arguably the best player, and that would be Mitch Marner as an unrestricted free agent. And I say that respectful of Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand, because I think that what we know is that the Florida Panthers have engaged with all three of their UFAs in Bennett, Marchand, and Aaron Ekblad. If they can't keep all three, then I think it's Ekblad who more likely pops into free agency. And I think Bennett flat out is staying in Florida. So that's why I look at Marchand as being the most coveted. So if he lands in Vegas and that's all they're able to do, then that's a real significant add. But they're also trying to add a defenseman, right? I know that McCrimmon and company like the idea of Bo Byram. I know that they have interest in Rasmus Anderson with the Calgary Flames. Go down the list. So this is a group that is always eager to make change, to make their roster better, and they're not afraid of taking some risks. We've seen that basically from year one in Vegas.
Listen, Columbus shocked the world a few summers ago when they signed the late, great Johnny Gaudreau. I don't think anybody expected that. Could we see a sleeper team come into play this year? I know it's not a sleeper. Anaheim's been, rumored to have some interest in wanting to make a big splash. Mitch Mueller's been connected to them. Could you see a team come out of left field and snatch up a guy like Marner, for example?
Not really. Maybe Dallas, but Dallas would have to move a ton of money. And I think that really that's where the Jason Robertson trade speculation has come from, is we in the media trying to attach the Dallas Stars to Mitch Marner. Now, Andy, I would tell you this. If you want to go back into the regular season in advance of the trade deadline, I think that there was some consideration given by the minor camp. All right, well, look, if you feel like you have to trade me because it's just not going to work out in the long term here, and you don't like our timeline, the minor camp established that they were going to market prior to the start of the season. Effectively, that's what they did, right? And I think that there would have been a point in the second half of the regular season where Marner may have considered a move to Vegas or Dallas. Well, it didn't happen. And I don't think that it was ever seriously considered, because think about it from all three perspectives here. If you're Toronto, are you seriously going to move arguably your best player? Guy had 102 points in season. It's challenging, unless you're getting to the trade deadline where they got to, and they can envision Mikko Rantanen coming to Toronto and signing his extension, and that ticks all boxes. But now you look at Dallas or Vegas, and they wouldn't have been able to rip apart their roster to give Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs the pieces there. So I think that that's where some of this comes from in relation to, say, Dallas and Marner. So I don't see another team coming out of the woodwork. I really don't. That's not to say that teams aren't going to try. And that's why, if you recall, I reported a couple of weeks ago, the process around Marner may take longer than all of us would like, right? I mean, so what if Darren Ferris collects all the offers on July 1st, July 2nd, and then he and Mitch whittle that list down to 3 or 4, and Marner hasn't officially decided that it's Vegas? And then he wants to visit this team, and he wants to go to that city. And now you're drifting into July 15th or so. I don't think that's going to happen. If it's Vegas, it's going to be Vegas July 1st or July 2nd or July 3rd, right? That's the most likely. But if it isn't, then I think, there's a possibility that that decision does take longer than most of us would like.
Hey, you've covered him way closer than I have, being there in Toronto. Is that his personality? You think he would prefer to get it done quickly, or would he like the attention of dragging it out and taking some personal visits?
No, I don't think he would like the attention of that. But if it's the best way to manage the best interests of his family, I think that, of course, he would do that. I don't think there's any question that he would do it. But again, we know that Vegas is keen on Mitch Marner.
Yeah.
And, it's not like Kellen McCrimmon is sitting there going, how do I make this work? He obviously has a mathematical plan as to how he can make it work to bring Marner into the fold. And that's moving money, making deals. There's questions, as I talked about on TSN last night, around the health of Alex Pietrangelo, as I'm sure you know. So what does that look like in Vegas moving forward? So if the only way it goes beyond, I'll repeat myself, is if Vegas and the Marner camp just can't make that deal that pretty much all of us expect is going to get made on July 1st.
Yeah. Petrangelo's situation is interesting. There's no question. What does this mean for Toronto, real quick? How different is this team going to look? I mean, assuming they bring Tavares back, but are they going to be the contending team that we thought that they would be heading into the last handful of years without Mitch Marner? I mean, how much is this going to impact their team? I guess we don't know who else they're going to sign, but just on the surface right now, how do you look at them?
It's going to be tough. I mean, how do you replace a player who had 102 points and a player who meshes perfectly almost with Auston Matthews? And, when Craig Berube or Sheldon Keefe before him wanted to mix things up, get John Tavares going, he'd put Marner with John Tavares. I mean, this is a tough one for Craig Berube, especially because I know that he appreciates the skill set of Mitch Marner, and I'm sure that he's worried and wondering, how do we replace that? Brad Treliving talked about a DNA change required in Toronto. Sure, I get it. I think he's 100% right. But, you can't just bring in rough and tumble players. These guys have to be able to produce offensively. They have to be able to cover the deficiency that's left by a 100-plus point winger. And that is going to be the challenge. They're going to try and do it by committee. So Sam Bennett isn't available. And Brad Marchand, who I think would really like to play for Craig Berube if things don't work out in Florida, isn't available. You know the cast of free agents. Where are we finding these players? Like you're not getting them via trade for Calle Yarncroke or David Kampf. So beyond that, is Easton Cowan trade bait? I mean, there's only so much of the trading of futures that Brad Treliving is going to be able to stomach before he goes, okay, I can't do that. And I don't really have the roster pieces that are going to attract an audience to get the players that we really truly want to invest in. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how things play out. It's going to be a challenge, but the answer has to come in lines 1 through 4. And not just from the top 6, because the top 6 talent may not be available to Toronto from the outside.
Yeah, and they're going to want to get Matthew Nye signed, obviously, and
yeah, that's priority. You're right.
Get that taken care of for sure. So Marchand, Florida seems like the most likely situation. They're just going to figure out a way to get it done. You could have, like, if he wanted to make the most money. Yeah, I mean, I don't see him doing this, but the best option may be to sign a 1-year deal with a bunch of bonuses and then go sign an extension on January 1st and then do it again. That's probably how he can make the most money. But is it all about the money with him right now?
I don't think so. Even though Matthew Tkachuk on the ice, as we all saw, post Stanley Cup, was just back up to that Brinks truck. I keep telling these guys. And look, Brad Marchand has earned his right to unrestricted free agency. I'm sure his preference was to stay and end his career in Boston. It didn't work out that way. And instead, he gets flipped to the team he wanted to go to, Florida, wins the Stanley Cup. I mean, it's storybook stuff. So why wouldn't you want to stay there? But the money does have to add up. And there is tax benefit, as we know, in Florida. But as I mentioned earlier, if the money isn't there entirely, then maybe it is from Toronto or another team. So Brad Marchand is going to have options to do a little bit of all of that.
All right, I just want to roll through a couple names here real quick. Noah Dapson, he wants to stay in the Eastern Conference. Is there a front runner there? And where do you see his number coming in at? Because I'm hearing that he wants north of $10 million, as much as $11 million per season.
Yeah,
Darren.
Yeah, you're in the ballpark there. It's harder to pinpoint exactly what that number is contractually, but I think you're right in that 10-11 range. As Chris Johnson reported not that long ago, we're probably going to have an answer to that question, Andy, at some point today, latest tomorrow. 2-horse race, Montreal and Columbus. And we know the St. Louis Blues were keen. They were interested in Noah Dobson. They're interested in Bo Byram and other pieces. We know that. I know that there's been speculation around Jordan Kyrou. We know that St. Louis is listening, and maybe he could be packaged as part of something moving forward. But yeah, Dobson and the managers involved here. It's not, Noah Dobson doesn't have the wherewithal to say, well, I want to go there. He can say, I prefer to go there. But at the end of the day, Matthew Darch of the New York Islanders is going to take the best deal available to him. And that's either going to be the Montreal Canadiens or the Columbus Blue Jackets. So we should have an answer on that sooner than later.
Yeah, you just wonder, does the deal get sweeter if there's an extension attached to the trade?
Probably.
Going, so Byram, you mentioned a number of teams. I've seen your reporting, on Bo and Byram. There's a lot of teams that are involved. I mean, is this a slam dunk that he gets moved 100%? Like, what is going on with Buffalo as to, why they're all of a sudden struggling keeping some of their younger players after they were able to extend the Powers and the Dahleens and the Tage Thompsons of the world?
Yeah, so I don't want to confuse JJ Peterka's situation with Bo Byram. It's different. I mean, Byram isn't opposed to staying in Buffalo, at least for one more year.
Right.
His issue is where he plays in their lineup. And, right now he's a second pairing defenseman in Buffalo. You've got Owen Power, you've got Rasmus Dahlin, you're sharing power play, all of that. And I mean, anybody knows Bo Byram knows that he's a top pair guy and maybe a number one in a lot of clubs around the National Hockey League. New agent, he's now represented by Darren Ferris, who represents Bennett and represents Mitch Marner and others. So they more or less have Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres in the palm of their hand. Really, they do. They can opt for arbitration and keep him in the mix in Buffalo for a year, and then Buffalo loses all leverage entirely, right? Because Byram is 2 years away from unrestricted free agency. So the maximum value for trade is likely right now. And, I would have thought before JJ Peterka got traded that Bo Byram was more likely to get traded than Peterka was, because that's what management in Buffalo was telling me all along. But Kevin was looking for a right shot defenseman. That was what the ask was part of for Byram. Instead, he gets that in the JJ Peterka deal, in Mike Kesselring. So that made a lot of teams that are interested in Byram happy, because not many clubs want to give up a good right shot defenseman. As soon as you give up that piece, you're looking for it, right? How many times do you hear that from general managers? So that opens up the options a little bit for clubs with interest in Bo Byram. And yeah, I'd be surprised if he doesn't get traded.
All right, last thing for you. I want to ask you about Edmonton, because you got the McDavid contract negotiations looming. You got Evan Bouchard, who's going to want to get paid. They just formally announced the Trent Frederick extension. Bouchard, $10 million plus. Are you okay with that? And what's going to happen with McDavid? When do you see this thing getting, finalized? And if it does get finalized, how do you see it playing out?
Let's start with Connor McDavid. There's no rush on a contract extension, and I wouldn't read anything into that. There's no negativity attached to, lack of negotiation or where they're at. I think everybody just has earned the right to let the dust settle a little bit. Connor isn't going anywhere. I'd be shocked if he doesn't extend. I am intrigued by what the length of that extension is going to look like. There's this perception that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are joined at the hip. And are they good friends? Sure, they're best friends, great friends. High level of respect for one another based on the elite status they have as superstars in the National Hockey League. But each guy manages his own business and his career path. And when you look at the Wasserman Group, Judd Moldaver, and how those guys manage their top end players, guess what they normally do with big name guys? Shorter term, right? So I'm not saying that that's what I think is likely. Would I be surprised if it's a 4 or 5 year extension for McDavid? No, but they haven't got in any of that yet, and they're just going to give it a bit of time. Evan Bouchard, man, the Oilers are in a jam here, and mostly because they've got Darnell Nurse sitting where he's sitting, right? And Evan Bouchard commanding what he's going to command. You're right. I mean, more than $10 million. And some want to creep it all the way up to close to 11. Not me, but some want to do that. So now you're talking about $20+ million invested into defensemen. The problem that you have, and Ray Ferraro talks about this all the time on the Rain Dregs podcast, you can look at the differing worlds of Evan Bouchard, and you can see the games in the regular season, first half of the year, where holy smokes, he's like Swiss cheese out there. It's just, he's checked out. And then all of a sudden he comes online, and then the playoffs come around. And okay, he wasn't impactful during the Stanley Cup final, but not many wearing the Oilers uniform were. But he earns his dollars in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And you let a player like that go, or you trade a piece like that go, you're looking for that guy for the next decade, right? So they're just gonna have to find a way and suck it up. And I'll remind everybody of this. We get caught in the media, we get caught up in the numbers. And we have to, because there's a salary cap and all teams are governed by it. But the cap is going up year by year by year. So are you really worried about paying Evan Bouchard $10.5 million next year, when the year after the cap is going to go up, and the year after that it's going to go? It's always going to be a management, and the best players, as you know, Andy, are always going to take the bigger slice of the pie.
That's right. That's why I don't think the Blues are all that concerned about paying Jordan Kyrou $8 million a year, with the cap going up if he's going to be scoring 35 goals a year. Well, we'll see how that plays out. I think a lot of people are connecting the dots there with the July 1st, his no trade kicks in on July 1st. Hey, are you hearing anything about St. Louis? I just don't want the people to kill me for not asking you, though.
Well, no, not more than what we've already discussed. And we know that Doug Armstrong likes to dabble in every conversation, right? He wants to be a part of it. He's a general manager that's proven that he's not afraid to take the Louisville off his shoulder and swing. He's done that repeatedly. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's active. I think I mentioned earlier in the interview, and I'll repeat myself here, they are listening on Jordan Kyrou, but only in the sense that if it brings in a bigger piece like a Noah Dobson, and I don't think they're any longer involved in that, but or a Bo Byram or somebody else, then I did hear that Rasmus Anderson is St. Louis on his no move list, or no trade list, which is kind of surprising to me, to be honest, because I would have thought that St. Louis would have interest in him since everybody else in the West seems to have interest in him. But for me, that's where the Kyrou stuff comes from. It's not about shopping the player, wanting to move away from the player because they're scared of the contract. I think it's recognition of you want to get valued players coming to St. Louis, well, you've got to give up a piece that teams around the National Hockey League covet.
Yeah, no doubt. Darren, I appreciate it. I know it's a busy day, first day of the draft. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for doing this as always.
All right, Andy. Thank you. As always, I appreciate it.
We'll be in touch. Have a great free agency. We'll be paying attention to your reporting for sure. So thanks a lot. All right, guys, that's Darren Dreger. Hope you appreciated that conversation. Always love it when Dregs comes on. It'll be interesting as we get to next week to see how this all plays out and what it looks like moving forward. But Darren Dreger breaking it down, I agree with him in terms of what he said about Jordan Kyrou. I mean, I think if you move Kyrou, you got to get a significant piece coming back the other way, and I think that's the mentality versus trying to just dump a player that you would maybe be looking to get rid of a contract if the player was underperforming, or if you didn't feel like he was a good fit. Listen, I understand that there's more to be desired with a guy like Jordan Kyrou come playoff time. I get it. It's right in front of our eyes. It is what it is. But that's why you have to surround those players with a versatility and a level of diversity that can kind of make up for some of those deficiencies that a player may have. We hear about that with Mitch Marner too. But all of a sudden, if he goes to a different team where you have a different core and the team is made up a little bit differently, and his deficiencies aren't nearly as exposed as maybe as they were in Toronto, because he's surrounded by a bunch of guys who kind of have the same level of intensity or grit or, strength or, just in terms of, what you're looking for from a player in the playoffs. And what it takes to win in the playoffs. I mean, when you look at the Florida Panthers, how their individual players come together and how they play, their level of compete. But if you just took one of those guys and put them in Toronto, I think it changes the overall complexion of the team. And now maybe you're not asking Mitch Marner to do some of the stuff that frustrates or has frustrated Maple Leaf fans. But when all the other star players kind of lack the same level of compete or intensity, then I think it's even more so exposed. I think he'd be a good fit in Vegas. I really do. Don't rule out Anaheim, though, either. I've been saying that over and over. They're looking to do something if they can with Mitch Marner, so they'll make a real offer, and we'll see where that how that plays out. All right, we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk Blues development camp coming up in our next conversation with Tim Taylor, the Blues assistant GM. Get into a lot of the prospects and see what's going on that end. Chris Zimmerman talking about the Blues' new uniform. That's later on in the show as well. This is Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. Again, check out all the different loan options you have at First Community. They've got so many of them. They are unbelievable when it comes to home loans, auto loans. You can save up money for vacations. They've got their own program for that. Put some money away. All of a sudden, at the end of the year, you've got a nice little chunk of money sitting there that you can use towards a family vacation. Or you can borrow money, go play today, and then pay it back later. Same thing with the holidays. Do you want to start a little holiday fund? Put some cash away every month, and then all of a sudden we get to the holiday season. You've got a lump of cash sitting there waiting for you. So do that and do it today. But the Blues 100% had interest in Noah Dobson. Again, he wants to go to the Eastern Conference. Trent Frederick officially signs his deal. I reported that a few weeks back that he was negotiating an 8-year contract extension with Edmonton. In that $4 million range, it comes in at 3.85. We'll talk Blues prospects. I'm Andy Strickland. Thanks for hanging out. As always, it's our Friday tradition here at the Half Coast Studios. Aiden's in the house today, and we're having a good time. It's the first day of the draft, then free agency next week, development camp next week as well. It's the best time of the year. Don't go anywhere. All right, Blues president and CEO Chris Zimmerman, you found your way back into studio. You brought gifts. We got the new jerseys. Are you leaving these jerseys when you leave today, or are you taking these with you?
No, I don't think you get to keep those. But
Come on.
we'll work towards maybe getting you your own version.
What
number? What's your number?
9.
That's my number.
Is it?
Yeah, so you're gonna have to change.
It's a great number.
Yeah.
But but my son, I told him he couldn't be number 9 because it just didn't work for me. So I was like, we got to switch it up. So he's 81. So 8 plus 1 is 9.
8+1, yeah.
But then he wore 9 this past spring with our AAA Blues program. It was based on size. So they just gave you a jersey and he randomly got 9. And it looked great on him. I'm like, wow, that looks great.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
I think you should let him go with it. I got lucky. I showed up to college and number 9, guy who had worn it the year before, had graduated, and somebody put it in my locker.
You know, strangely enough, I don't think the Blues have ever had really like a legendary number 9. I mean, I say that, and people are going to email me or be like, you forgot so. But I mean, Doug Gilmour wore 9, so he would fall in that category. But since him, maybe
number 9.
Shane Corson wore 9. Texier's wearing 9 now, but it's such a great number.
It is a great number. Yep.
Great hockey number.
Yep.
For sure. Why'd you pick 9?
I didn't pick it.
Oh.
I got to college my freshman year. I'd actually been number 7 probably most of my youth.
Yeah.
And I showed up and it was in my locker.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that could have been way worse. They could have given you a terrible number.
Yeah, I don't know what that would have been, but
yeah.
I was just happy to know that there was a sweater there in my locker waiting for me.
The Blues have had some great number 7s too over the years.
Oh yeah,
too. Some unbelievable 7s. So anyway, this is you brought 55 in with you today. When fans look at this jersey, and obviously when the season begins in early October, like, when did this first come up? The concept of changing the logo, the colorway, the new jerseys. I mean, how much planning goes into something like this?
Well, I think it's really the culmination of a couple of different projects, really, and going back to the 17 Winter Classic. And I think, the league has had really a focus in that event on nostalgia, heritage, bringing out the past. And, when we developed the sweater that we wore at Busch Stadium and we went to what we've been calling Heritage Blue, we like the idea of it becoming St. Louis Blue. That really started the process of wow, this is really powerful. It harks back to our early years. It's a distinctive blue, in a league with many different teams that do wear blue sweaters. And, I think importantly, the feedback was just so consistent. And it started with the fans. We've consistently gotten really good player feedback. So that was step 1, that look, that blue is something special. Then when you have the next 2 Winter Classics where we play on the road, again, we're kind of learning and evolving. So that was one piece of it, probably that really drove the color and the thought that this is our identity. And then from there, we started a project with an outside design firm, which was probably the project started probably about 4 years ago. And some of it was, we have this great mark, one of the most iconic marks in sports with the blue note. But there are a couple of things about actually executing it that we could refine. And then secondly, we need some additional marks. I mean, it's just in today's sports world, you need to have a broader identity than just your core mark. And so some of the other marks we developed came out of that.
Yeah, including this one. So
Yes.
it's almost like having multiple logos, even though this is the logo. Nothing will ever replace this logo. And I love how you always keep the front of the sweater clean with just the logo. But how do you plan on utilizing this? This is going to be on the helmet and the pants, correct?
Well, it won't be on the helmet.
Oh, no.
It was on the helmet for the winter
There we
clothes.
go.
But
Car shield will be on the helmet, right?
yes, exactly. So our business partners are on the helmet. But it's certainly, we've seen already, it's on hats, it's on T-shirts, it's on sweatshirts. It will be on our pant leg. So it's a really important mark. And the discussion of wanting our unique expression of St. Louis or STL, that conversation actually probably goes back almost 10 years, probably for most of the time that I've been here. And the project, we got after the project, and, it's interesting. We had to go through the Cardinals. We had to work with Major League Baseball to get their approval.
To make sure that this is not too
That it's
similar
not
to their
infringing.
STL. What did the
Yep.
Cardinals say? Were they okay
Well, the
with it?
Cardinals were okay right from the start, but they also said, hey, but you got to really, the important thing is you got to get Major League Baseball's approval. So, yeah, we went through a period of working with Major League Baseball to make sure, and you go through other checks to ensure that you haven't created a mark that infringes on someone else.
Yeah. So no tweaks had to be made. Like they approved it pretty much
Yes.
right away.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you roll this out, I mean, are you confident that the feedback is going to be positive right off the bat? Do you worry about that? Because it has been positive. I mean, people obviously love the jersey. So how much goes into it, I guess, when you're going to release it and announce it? Are you nervous on that day? Or
Well, I don't know that we were nervous because we felt like we've been learning, testing. We've done surveys. We felt really confident. I'll tell you, I think the response has exceeded some of our expectations, because in today's world, really, you usually have a group of haters
mm-hmm.
that you're fighting that, and they're usually
The loudest.
quite loud.
Yeah.
And, I think whether it's the online response, but also just at STLauthentics.com and in our main retail store,
Mm-hmm.
the sales volume the first day was extraordinary. And the sweaters aren't available till September. So people responded, if you will, with their pocketbook,
Mm-hmm.
and they voted really strongly. And tonight we've got a season ticket holder event to in connection with the draft, and I think we're going to see another really strong night.
Yeah, no, fans, they love the jersey. You just don't ever think about how a trim on a number, how much of a difference it makes whether you have the trim or you don't have. And if there has been, I mean, to be transparent, if there is been any criticism, that's what people talk. Well, where's the trim on the number?
Mhm.
But how much do you guys discuss that? Are you looking at numbers with the trim and without it, and then coming to your
Well,
decision?
look, we looked at everything, and yes, then there has to be something that people can critique.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do camera tests.
Yeah.
So listen, I think it's fair to say that it's as much art, probably more art than science.
Mm-hmm.
But this is really important. It's our identity, it's our brand, our fans and their votes. Every one of them matter, and we feel like we've done a nice job of capturing it. And now there's a lot of work beyond this. It probably will actually take a few years. If you think about every place a blue note appears,
oh my God,
that
to change the logo to the new design,
the adjustment is going to take a few years.
I mean, how many logos are there just inside the building alone?
Well, in the locker room, and yes, so when you come down really in the fall, and some of the work's happening now, there's a number of areas, particularly around the locker room, because that's one of the most visible places in the building that people see. I mean, some of the digital and the boards, those are the easier things to make those adjustments. But there are a lot of places where there are physical, hard logos, word marks, all of those things will be in a process. I can tell you we've made changes in the past. It takes a few years for all the people in the that use our mark to get up to speed.
Yeah.
I'll go in and find a keychain that has the logo that probably was, or a word mark that was used 15 years ago. So an interesting process living in the world of logos and word marks.
Are you a guy who you've been doing this for a long time. Do you like change? Do you is the idea to make the adjustment or make the change, but then stick with it for a long period of time? This is not something you're wanting to do every 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah, no, am I a guy that likes change? Well, I like change for the better.
Yeah.
But hey, I grew up before even getting involved in the NHL as a brand and marketing guy. My time at Nike, your mark and your identity is something that, if you will, you treasure and you manage carefully. We've talked a little bit about an idea within this change that this represents what we've called new heritage. So that's being true to the past, but evolving and modernizing. The fact that in the old days, when the logo was when the blue note was last adjusted, the online world and the digital world was such a minor part. Now it's massive. And so how the blue note translated, and the fact that we had the very thin lines that people needed to go in and adjust, it's appropriate that people are looking at their marks, and I think you'll see it with some of the other long-term NHL teams also doing that.
If you go to the team store, can you even find, if people want the old logo or a T-shirt or a sweatshirt with the old logo, those are all gone now, right?
No, they're not all gone.
Okay.
They're not, and I'm sure
because now it's vintage.
Well, yeah, and our home sweater is now the third jersey, so
you don't have to throw those away.
Yes, you do not have to throw those away, but we'd be really happy for you to also
buy a new one.
Yeah, update, and you've got players that you want to update, and all of those good things.
No question about that. Right now, if you go into the team store, can you find all the new? It's all there, right? The new hats, T-shirts, everything.
Well, there will continue to be more. I understand.
Yeah, well, there's a demand. Yeah,
that we've had such success that a couple of the styles of the hats are sold out. I can assure you, we'll be reordering. But yes, there's I think a pretty broad selection there.
How many notable alumni have told you over the years to say, "Hey, listen, I love this color scheme. You guys should go to this on a permanent basis"?
Yeah, I mean, it's been well, less they said that's the best. The specifically, that's the best sweater, and or that should be
Mm-hmm.
the core look. Um, I think we've had the stories certainly of Hully giving feedback. I was one night when we were wearing the Heritage Blue sweaters, and Gretzky was at the game, and I'm sitting next to him, and he said, "Yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah.
Those should be your jersey." So, having the great one and Hully behind you, that's a good pair. How many goals is that, Andy?
What, 894 plus 741, I think is, do the math for me there, Roger. Whatever that equals.
Yeah, that's
a lot.
Goals to give it some credibility in their
Yeah.
point of view.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The draft is tonight, first round tonight, and this is a little bit different. I don't know how long we're going to be doing this. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to have everyone in one city? Do you like the decentralized setup that we have for this year? Does it really matter from your standpoint or no?
there's arguments for both. Um, the draft is such an interesting event. If you're not on the floor working, you're not part of the hockey ops team. It's a slow,
Oh yeah,
it's
drawn out.
slow, drawn out event. When you're there, I argue that for the fans, at least in our sport, generally watching it on television is a better experience because they can tell the story. They have all the footage, and so
especially for day two. I will say, day one, being at the draft for the first round, to have a chance to see a future superstar or two or many go across the stage and shake the hand of the commissioner. There is some excitement,
and certainly for those players, and that's going to happen tonight. So we're going to learn.
Yeah,
I think tonight. I know I saw Doug mentioning, not having the ability to sort of have the side conversations live. I think for him and maybe some of the staff, I can certainly understand that there was an advantage to being live.
NFL's been doing it for years, though, right?
Yes, yeah, and so we'll see. I certainly give Steve Mayer, who is he's now president of content and all of the creative for the league. So his team puts on the show.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting challenge tonight, but he's proven time and time again to bring fresh new ideas, as was just witnessed by how they announced the awards this season.
Yeah, which I liked it.
Yeah,
it was a good change.
Yeah.
And he's always done a great job with the events and whatever. So, it is nice to be there. The Blues hosted the draft in the mid-'90s a long time ago. Is that something you'd want to do, host a draft? You've done the All-Star Game. You've done the Winter Classic. Would you want to host a draft one day?
Well, sure, because I would say we want to have every top hockey event we can in St. Louis, and I think we deserve all the best events. So would I like to see a draft come back here? Yeah, but some of it's going to depend on where we go with the format as well.
All right, so we're recording this in the morning. Today, the league is having a press conference, and by all accounts, they're going to announce a new agreement with the league and the Players Association. I mean, as a president of a team, how do you look at the relationship right now between the players and the owners? I mean, the game is in a good spot right now, right?
I think the game's in an excellent spot. I think the fact that in relatively short time, the league and the Players Association is getting to a new agreement I think certainly the commissioner and Bill Daly, the associate commissioner, deputy commissioner, have been pretty vocal or in giving credit to Marty Walsh, the Players Association executive director. I think he what's he been in that job, maybe 2 years,
If that,
yeah. I mean, I've seen him come speak to the board a couple of times. He's an impressive guy, and I like the way he thinks. The fact that the league and the Players Association can get to a new agreement relatively quickly, I think it speaks to the strength of the foundation of our agreement with the players. Obviously, the 50-50 revenue share is a core principle that you sort of build everything off of. Coming through the pandemic, where the economics for everyone was challenged, I think that our CBA helped us get through that. Now, we've gone through a time period, players, at first they owed the owners money for a couple of years, so now we're just about having resolved that. So now the cap has some catching up to do to reflect the 50-50 relationship. So, and that's going to be an interest. The numbers are getting big. The growth of the cap is going to probably exceed some of the new revenue growth. So it's, we're in for an interesting time as teams adjust and determine where they're going to land in their investment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good time to be a hockey fan. I mean, everything you always wonder, and been through so much, labor issues in the past, and it's just good to have everybody on the same page and everything kind of moving forward and in a positive fashion.
Yeah, no, I think it's good time to be a hockey player.
Yeah.
I think, there's good opportunities. I think that there are, there are elements of the new CBA that understandably, in some cases, the players will feel a little bit better about it. And in some cases, I think ownership will feel better. That's a CBA, right? That's usually the way it's going to go.
Right.
And I think the game is in a great place. And, you have highly competitive league. I think great balance. You've got, on average, 5 teams making the playoffs each year that weren't there the year before. That's been a pretty consistent number. All of those things, I think, speak to the game being in a good place.
Yeah. That expansion fee is going up. It's a good thing you already have a team, that the Blues are already here. I mean, the expansion number, right, to get a team it's not cheap anymore for professional sports. It's crazy.
No, the team values are rising rapidly.
Yeah.
The Lakers just sold for $10 billion after the Celtics were sold 3.5 months before for $6 billion. Now, I don't know that the Lakers did that many things over those 3 months to create $4 billion worth of value. And I get it, LA, Boston, but Boston's pretty awesome franchise, both history, recent play, the whole thing. So the sports teams' values are going up. It's just reflective of the fact that, in today's media and communication world, live content and sports are really one of the absolute most valuable, sort of things out there.
Yeah, no
So
question about
we're
that.
benefiting.
All right, last thing for you. What's new coming up next season, what can you tell us about what we could maybe see coming up next season? I mean, last year you had a bunch of events. I know the planning is going into next season. Anything different we'll see around the Enterprise Center? Any new events coming up next week that you can, or next year, that you can kind of hint at right now, or you're still in the planning stages of that?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly building off the momentum of the end of the season, and we're really pleased at the response from in terms of new tickets, continuing to grow our partnership business, and I think we're in a little different place on the media front.
Yeah.
Because a year ago, FanDuel was in bankruptcy, and we spent a lot of time, as did other teams, over the summer, sort of evaluating new options, and really in a time period that had a lot of uncertainty. There's continuing change in the local, regional television world, but I feel much better in terms of us knowing where our partner is, believing that they're stable. They've got new people leading their production side. And, I think continuing to make our broadcast more and more dynamic. You have to do it in this world, particularly where a lot of it now is needing to have people get our games through streaming and direct to streaming products. And so that's a different choice than when it was in here's my cable bundle.
Yeah.
I'm done. And so, yeah, I think the media front and how we continue to make our games more dynamic.
Yeah.
I'd say that's going to be one of our critical objectives for the year ahead.
Okay, looking forward to it. Great job on these jerseys. They look really, really nice. And again, this is going to be the road jersey, St. Louis blue. That's what we're calling that shade of blue, and really nice work. Who should we credit for kind of leading the charge on the uniforms?
Well, I think, listen, like all the projects we have, it's a pretty broad group. I would call out, Steve Chapman and Brenda Wilbur, who is our creative director and has sort of navigated all the nuances of getting to the right blue note, the best blue note for this uniform.
Yeah, no, it looks really good. And we look forward to the draft tonight at the Enterprise Center.
Yeah,
Fans are going to be down there, obviously, all weekend long. So we'll see who the newest player is, and they're going to wear the jersey on stage when they get called up tonight. So
yes,
19th overall pick. Z, always great to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
I hope you enjoyed Chris Zimmerman joining us in our last segment. Again, Tim Taylor was supposed to join us earlier on the show, but again, it's a busy day, first day of the draft. There's so much stuff going on. People are in meetings, they're on the phone, they're doing different things. And so I just suggested, hey, let's do it next week after development camp. We'll have more to talk to Tim Taylor about anyway. But, we had Darren Dreger on the show. So much what we got into with the free agency and everything else going on. I think a lot of people are on Jordan Kyrou watch. I know people tuning in to the show today, they want to hear about Kyrou. And listen, all I'll say is this. I do think his name is in play. The Blues aren't looking just to give him away. The guy does score north of 30 goals every single year, or at least he has for the last 3 seasons. So now the question mark is, who do you get back in return? You're not looking to just get rid of the contract, but you're looking to improve your team. And if that means moving Jordan Kyrou, I think they're going to look very hard at it. I know they already have looked hard at it, and they'll continue to do so. And I think there's a couple other potential deals that are in place that are on the table right now that the team is strongly looking at. Again, Jordan Kyrou, his no trade clause kicks in on July 1st. Don't be surprised if something were to happen before then, but I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed either. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing went either way. But I know Doug Armstrong is looking to get involved in some things and really improve this team and try to take this team to the next level in an effort to win. Don't be surprised if Robert Bortuzzo gets involved with hockey operations as well. Respected guy, spent a long time obviously playing in the NHL, long time here in St. Louis, Stanley Cup winner, tight with Alexander Steen, tight with a number of people around the organization. And I think when it's all said and done, he may find himself here working with the St. Louis Blues from a hockey operation standpoint. Whether that means scouting or what the role would be, who knows? But don't be surprised if you hear Robert Bortuzzo's name. So, again, we'll get back at it. Follow me on Twitter at Andy Strickland. You can follow me on Instagram at RealStrickNasty. We've got the draft tonight. Matthew Schaefer expected to go first overall to the New York Islanders. So, again, we didn't even really cover the draft much this year on Hockey Sense just because the Blues picking 19th, only having 3 picks, but so much other stuff going on with the Stanley Cup Finals just ending and everything else. We just haven't really locked into the draft as much as we have in previous years. But enjoy the coverage tonight nonetheless. And we'll have some content for you on all the Blues social media channels throughout the next couple of days. Of course, the first round tonight and then rounds 2 through 7 tomorrow on Saturday. Hockey Sense is always brought to you by First Community. We love our friends over at First Community. All right, home equity loans. Summer's here. You like those warm, sunny days to think about entertaining with your friends and family? Hey, listen, now's the time to spruce up your outdoor space with that new look. And you can do so with a new kitchen, new bath, whatever it is, whatever the project, a home equity line of credit. That's the way to go. You want to get that home equity line of credit. You only advance what you need when you need it. You pay one monthly affordable payment, and then you can pay off your balance at any time with no repayment penalty. But your line of credit stays open. So right now, First Community offering first line home equity loan for amazing introductory rate of just 4.9 APR. That's amazing. The current rate of this loan is 8.24, but you won't pay that until next year. So you get the 4.9% for the first 12 months, and you don't pay the current rate of 8.24% until after a full year. So no closing costs, no application fee. It's a great rate, but it won't last long. You know that. So be sure to check out firstcommunity.com and do that today. Again, we talked about Frontenac Detailing. Check them out. Located right there at Conway and Lindbergh at the Honda Frontenac dealership. They're not really affiliated with Honda Frontenac, but I took my car in there. It's amazing. Now I'm getting the ceramic coating on my car. It's going to look like a brand new car, and I can't wait for that. But again, if you have a wife who drives your kids around all day long, or if you drive your kids around and it's got sticky lollipops and there's chip crumbs everywhere, get it cleaned up. Have a clean car. It'll make you feel brand new, man. Do that with Frontenac Detailing. Blue Note Roofing, 314-920-5713. Call David Novak today and get set up with David Novak. Roofing, gutters, soffit, fascia, siding, whatever it is. Did you suffer storm damage? Let David Novak come give you that free estimate and take care of you. Again, nobody does it better than David Novak at Blue Note Roofing. Look for that yellow truck with the blue notes on the side of it. 314-920-5713. Lordo's Diamonds. Of course, our friends over at Dirt Cheap Fun Gear, one-stop party shop, baby. But again, Hockey Sense would not be possible without our friends over at First Community. And of course, our friends here at Half Coast Studios. For Aiden, I'm Andy Strickland, reminding you to keep your head up and your stick on the ice. Enjoy the NHL draft and then free agency, which kicks off Tuesday. You've got the Camistrick podcast. Our last episode had Brady Tkachuk. Great conversation with him following another Stanley Cup for the Florida Panthers and Matthew Tkachuk. So be sure to check that out as well. Again, this is our Friday tradition. Each and every week, all year long, we do Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. Have a great weekend, everybody.